starting on time? Yes.
Yeah. Talk like that.
Hello?
Oh, right here? Oh, I don't think so.
And prepare the way.
Huh?
Prepare the way he's singing the song.
No.
Prepare the way.
Is that or sorry? You can sit over here if you want.
You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world, Jesus. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. You are the light of the world, Jesus. You are the King of the earth. You are the King of the earth. You are the King of the earth, Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Prepare the way, prepare the way, prepare the way, Lord. Prepare the way, prepare the way, prepare the way,
Is this Jesus love you? Or we all fall down?
Jesus, you love my soul. Jesus, I will never let you go. Take me from the miry clay. Set my feet upon the rock. Now I go. I love you. I need you. Though my world may never let you go, my Savior, my closest friend, I will worship you till the very end. Jesus, you lover of my soul. Jesus, I will never let you go. Taking me from the miry clay. Set my feet upon the rock. Now I know that I love you. I need you.
Don't submit too much.
My Savior, my closest friend, I will worship you till the very end. God, we thank you that you call us to the foot of the cross. You call us to our humanity. But we know that you want to come and show us the ways and the things that we need to give up to be more like you. So it's Ash Wednesday, we pray that as we start this journey together, that we may find you anew. May we once again proclaim you as our Savior, our friend, as the one that loves us, deeper than any earthly love can go. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. Are you seated? I need you. Though my world is gone, never let me go. You're my stay, my closest friend. I will worship you till the end.
Man, it's so hard to want to say good morning, but that was so wrong. Welcome to Ash Wednesday. If you're with us here present, we're glad you're here. And also glad if you're meeting us online. I know that's kind of a weird, chipper way to come across for Ash Wednesday, kind of a different time of year, but I want to go with it. I want it to be different for us today. Thank you for coming out. Still some people coming in, that's good. We don't always have the right emotions for the right times. Has that ever happened to you where you're supposed to be kind of in a low place, but you can't help but people get caught in something like that? And I think that's kind of God's way of keeping us on our toes. We don't realize why we get taken by something like that, but just that we go with it. So I'm hoping you'll go with it today as well. This is the beginning of Lent, and some people call it the season of Lent. And so when I think about that, the first thing I think about is that it's got to have a beginning, that's today, and it has to have a logical end. That's what seasons do. They come and they go. So each year we set aside this time to reflect on where our faith is, or at least that's what we tell people, right? This is the time where I'm reflecting on who I am and how I'm living into this Christian faith that I have. I just know that for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, I leave every single time with, how is this year different for me than it was 4 days ago? How am I in a different place than I was when this season began? So for roughly 40 days and 40 plus, if you're willing to include the Sundays with it, we have this road that leads to Easter, and we put something aside to commemorate Jesus being in the wilderness for 40 days, or we talk about the things that we agonize over, but we don't want that to be the feeling, right? When we give something up, we don't want to agonize, we don't want to resent it. We just want a reminder. I think the best thing I can think of for this is like when you rub the wrong side of Velcro. It doesn't hurt, right? But you know you've rubbed up against something. And that's what I would hope. I would hope we would start with that as kind of what we're aiming for, because I don't think Jesus wants us to suffer through Easter, but I think he wants us to be reminded that this journey that he was on, this journey that we are on, is one that has some abrasiveness to it. There's a tough part to it. It's meant to commemorate this time in the wilderness. And sometimes as an extra measure, we'll actually look at our lives more deeply and say, you know what, I want to try and stop doing this, or I want to try and do more of this during these 40 days. And what that does is that puts us in a new routine, in a new habit, and puts us doing something that we're not used to doing, and hopefully if we're keeping up with it,
it'll bring a whole new attitude. It'll bring a whole new kind of behavior out of it. But to what end? To what end? Why? Why do we come out year after year and commemorate the same thing? Why do we go through all this? And then Easter Sunday, we go right back to that thing that we gave up. Or Easter Sunday, we feel like we're off the hook, and everything that we try to kind of push aside in our life, we can kind of let it kind of slowly creep its way back in and be that same person that we were 40 days before, but it might just take 3 or 4 or 5 days to get back into the way that was. Now, I know why Jesus did it, right? We know exactly why Jesus did it. We know what the ramifications meant for him. We knew exactly from the moment he went into the wilderness what his purpose would be, because he came out sharing that purpose, right? We look at a part of his faith journey that then opens the door to our faith journey. And we realize that the moment he steps foot out of the wilderness, he's on the road to the cross. But we also know that he's gathering people immediately from that point. And like I said, putting himself on that one-way trip. And meanwhile, we're thinking after 40 days, we're off the hook. We've made it through the Lenten season for 2021. We're finished. We've done it. And sometimes that's in just what we've given up, and then sometimes that's theological. We drop out of this whole Easter excitement and just fall back into, every other Sunday in the year until Advent rolls around, until Christmas comes around. We can just kind of settle back into the way that we've been. But Jesus dies so that we can live. He shoulders all of our sin, and he opens the door to a new connection to God. And then 3 days later, he rose from the grave. So I went to nearly a decade of school and racked up debt like you cannot believe, so that I can give that to you at no charge. You're welcome. Sorry, Jay and I were talking about this in the podcast. We got very excited about making the Lenten season something more than just simply start here, hang on for dear life until the end, and then you can go back to who you were. We really wanted to kind of go even one step further. I just want to turn this season on its ear, to do something different that will start those hearts burning again, you know? I would want us to be like the 2 men that were walking with Jesus on the way to Emmaus, and he's telling them these stories, and they're following him, and I would imagine, and my kids have done this to me, they're walking step for step with him. They're not letting him get ahead, they're not letting him get behind, they're not letting him get anywhere. They want to hear all the stories he has to tell. I want our hearts to burn like that. And I want this season to be the catalyst, the thing that starts that off. All right. I want to begin this thing the right way, okay? So I'm going to go to the Word of God first so that we at least have a compass heading. We have a direction that we're going. I am not just speaking off the cuff for the next 35 minutes. Just kidding. It won't be that long. This is Luke chapter 4. To give you kind of a heads up, Jesus has just been baptized in the Jordan River, and this is the very first thing that happens after this is where we're going to be, and that's at verse 1. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them he was very hungry. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, tell the stone to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone." The devil led him up to a high place and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And he said to him, "I will give you all their authority and splendor. It has been given to me, and I can give it to anyone I want to. If you worship me, it will be yours." Jesus answered, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." The devil led him to Jerusalem and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down from here. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you carefully. They will lift you up with their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus answered, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test." And when the devil had finished all his tempting, he left him until an opportune time. Like I said, this is how our Lenten season begins. It begins coming out of that wilderness. We follow the source. We try to imitate his struggle on the small scale that we do, right? And then we call it Easter. We go 40 days later and we call it Easter. And I know we've seen this text an Ash Wednesday before, maybe even one or two before. But I'm also a firm believer in the living word. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that at the situation that we were in when you were there, probably in the little building next to the gym, we talked about this. It had a meaning for us that evening. And you know what I believe? I believe it has a completely different meaning for us today. Why do I believe that? I believe because the word is so all-encompassing for our lives that it can do that. So for instance, today's passage mirrors the temptation that Adam and Eve had in the garden when the serpent was tempting them. The three questions the devil asks are quite similar to the three arguments that are made by the serpent. Okay. Or we could look at the types of temptations. We could say to ourselves, you know what? I'm going to fall into one of these three categories more than the other. And maybe that was a direction we could go. We could be looking at it from the standpoint of, well, I have a real problem with authority, or I have a real problem with self-control or something like that. And maybe that's what we did. We would gravitate to one of these kind of temptations and say, Lord, during this time, help me not be tempted by that. But let's look at it differently today. So in terms of transformation power, in order, what I'm saying is what Jesus does that transforms us beyond this moment, what are the answers that we can give to the temptations that come our way? What are the answers that we can give to the temptations that come our way? Let me show you what I mean. First, where Jesus talks about providing for us and how he provides for us versus what the devil is offering. So in terms of not living by bread alone, we have to understand that, well, everybody knows if you sat close to me right around 10:30, 11 o'clock, something like that, my stomach starts to make noise. And it is very, very loud. And it will stop people talking. They will say, did something just break somewhere because my stomach is making so much noise? But I'm sure that there's actually more than just this physical need for food that Jesus is talking about here. I think there's also a spiritual hunger that God provides for that simple bread does not. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's realizing that when the devil throws this idea of making the stones into bread, he's only talking about a momentary need right then and there. But when Jesus offers the bread of life, he's not just talking about the food that we eat. He's talking about this bread that you never go hungry from again, ever. So when we start talking about things like fasting for something, and we take the idea of immediate gratification out of it, like I'm so hungry I want to eat right now, and instead we fast for an answer, we go to God for an answer, it's almost like we're learning about a tool that God has given us. And too often we throw fasting away as something you only do at Lent. But however, I would say to you, if God has put you in a spot where you need a very important answer to you, why not take a moment? Why not fast a meal, fast a day? You won't die. and see how God opens up himself to you and reveals himself in that moment. I'm not talking about unsafe fasting, right? But rather fasting that draws us closer to God. So instead of having that meal, even if you just skip that meal and simply say, Lord, I'm just going to take this time and I'm going to pray. And I'm going to seek you and I'm going to see what you have to say to me. And I believe God will give us the means to endure through that. So that's what I think about that first question. Next, worship the Lord and serve him only certainly highlights that committed life that we are supposed to have. That we are not supposed to let anything try and come between, create a wedge, do anything at all to get between us and God. And it also puts us on a path to look at the alternatives that we might come up with to serving God. And seeing how very quickly they do not measure up. Seeing how quickly they could not be as good as if we were serving God. Is the devil really able to give him these kingdoms? And is he really giving him to them if Jesus has to worship him? Because in a sense, all Jesus becomes is a landlord. He's not really running these places. He's merely the person that's on boots on the ground, there in charge. So compare what God offers to what the devil offers. And then indeed it's doing what we're supposed to do, is simply following God's design, right? So last but certainly not least, do not put the Lord your God to the test. I think that's sound advice. I think that works in and outside of the Lenten season, that it's really not a good idea to put the Lord your God to the test. I mean, no matter what direction you look at that, that really does work. But I think for me and for us in this case, it's more about remembering who's really in charge, who's really running the show. And if you're putting yourself in that position, you're in trouble. But it's also this, it's what it means to be a catalyst, to be an agent of change. And if we are, and we are called to be, if we are an agent of change, we need to know who's the one drawing the map. We need to know who's the one drawing out where that goes. We need to know who's the one that is going to be there at the finish line when we're done. Because there's one thing that I would say, and I don't know if you ever got the impression of this, but I will say I never got the impression that God could not, right? If Jesus was to make that jump, that God could not stop, that God could not catch him before even so much as a toe touched a rock. I don't think that's the case. I just think it's so much better that we let God do the saving, that we let God be the one that designs the days of our life and how our life goes, rather than us trying to live a daredevil life of, I'm going to decide when my time is or not. God sent Jesus to save us, to be our Lord for us, so that we could be children, not subjects. So now the question today is, how do you take this thing beyond Easter? Well, let's go back to the Bible. Has anybody ever read past that? Have you ever read past that point where Jesus has been tempted and the next story? Have you read that? Of course, well, we've read it, but I don't think we've ever read it during the Lenten season, because we're always fixated on these three questions and the great answers that Jesus gives. But what does he do? He immediately goes into the synagogue and he pulls out one of the scrolls, but he doesn't pull out just any old scroll, right? He pulls out Isaiah, and he starts talking about this guy who would come and bring this year of favor. He would bring sight to the blind. He would do all these things, and then if you can believe this, he stands in front of all these people and he says, this is happening in your presence right now. And what do? They try to throw him off a cliff. So what I'm saying is, I want everybody after Easter to get yourself in a position where people want to throw you off a cliff. No, I'm really not saying that. I'm not. But I mean, how many of us have gotten to the end of our time in the wilderness, right? That time where we've tried to put a sin aside, or we've tried to stay away from something. And how many of us have actually decided to try and take it even deeper after that? Have decided to go, you know what, this is pretty good, but what if I was to try and even rely more that God would help me shave more things off of me that don't need to be there? Maybe not the first thought. Maybe after a couple of pieces of chocolate or a caffeinated beverage, if that's what it was, and maybe you're in a better position to make that decision. I don't know. But hear me out. Jay and I were talking about this last week in the podcast, and it was energizing to think of this, right? I mean, the church is always trying to get people to be transformed and continue on their transformation. It's not a one-stop. It is if Jay was just here to hear it, it's a journey. That drives us crazy. We throw that out there every once in a while. But here's what I'm doing today. For you here, for you out there in Facebook land, I am giving you the perfect starting point. You know, we got New Year's, we make New Year's resolutions. We've got this moment right now where it gives way to a season where it ends with a cross, but it ends in our victory. What if it didn't end at the victory? What if the victory was just another reminder of why we're being transformed? Now, knowing what I know about the next series, it's going to call us to look more deeply into our relationship with Jesus by unearthing some foundational questions. But I don't want to jump ahead of myself just yet. But I do really want us to start off right. I want us to start off right today. So did everybody get a piece of paper on their way in? If you did not, they're on the back there. This is for you. This is part of your journey during this Lenten season, okay? This is not some elaborate ploy to get some dirt on you, okay? I'm not looking to kind of keep score on who's doing what wrong in this thing at all. Or a dirty trick to figure out what you're giving up so I can eat it or drink it or have it present with me while you're right close by. That's not what it is. My hope is this exercise will bring a new effect, a new thought to our Lenten journey. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to take that piece of paper and something to write with and write down on it a sin, a struggle, something you're struggling with, a sin in your life that you want to have more control of, or you want God to take control of, better put, and write that down. And then on the same side of that piece of paper, I want you to think about something that you would be willing to give up for the next 40 days. Now, again, this is not meant to be something that is so hard, that is so difficult that you are dehydrated. That was me one time. Or you're nearly on scurvy. You don't give up vitamin C, okay? I'm just saying it should be something that just, like a piece of Velcro, it's just a slight reminder that you're doing something different. Not that this is in some way going to be like a you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours moment between you and the Lord, but it is a moment where we are putting something at the foot of the cross, right? We're putting something at the foot of the cross so that we don't have to carry it, that we would be made different on the other side of it. So I'm going to give you a minute to write those things down, and I'm going to write some down too. But I also think today we're going to do something a little bit different. And I kind of set you up because it looks exactly like it's always looked every time that we've done this. But when you fold it one time, and as you and we've thought about this for the sake of precautions and everything, I'm going to ask that people come as families to receive their ashes, because then I can sanitize between families, make sure that we're keeping everything above board. But as you receive your ashes, I want you to hand that paper to my lovely assistant Paul, and he is going to nail it to the cross. Now here's where it's going to get a little bit stickier than it normally is, because normally we get to burn that thing and we don't ever have to look at it again. But what happens? If it's out of sight, then how close to it are we really? How ready are we really to leave it at the cross? But I promise you, they will be burned. But during our season of Lent, while we are trying to remember why we're here and while we're trying to be transformed, I want us to be able to see what we've set aside, what we've left here, and for it to visually be there every week for us so that we can see what victory really looks like. So I'm going to ask Paul and his wife to come on up here, and I will pose ashes on them, and then he will then be my helper. And again, I ask if you would just come as a family and just give me a moment to quickly hand sanitize to make sure that we're keeping everything safe for everybody. And folks, for you at home that would want to participate in this, I've tried to think of some really neat ways to do this, and I think the quickest one that came to mind is if you just get in touch with me and we can work out a time when I can get that from you, and I'll gladly nail it to the cross. It'll be there for you as well. So just contact me, email me, text me, and we'll work out a time where I can get those papers from you. They don't have to look exactly the same. I'll nail them to the cross, and I want this to be something that does connect us and keeps us connected. Okay? All right.
So I'll stand. We fall down, we lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of His mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. We fall down, we lay our crown at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. And we cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy. And we cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb.
So it begins. This can be 40 days where Easter rolls around and it feels like no time has passed. This can be 40 days where you're looking and saying, Lord, show me what is new for me today. Help me be changed and transformed today. Go in peace and have a good night.
We cry, holy, holy.